I don't underestimate the non-readiness of a corporate customer or a customer. The hand-holding needed, where they are, how to take them along.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to yet another episode of Couchonomics with Arjun in collaboration with GFTN Japan. We're beaming in from Tokyo, from a shrine right behind us, which is arguably the most picturesque setting I've had in over 150 episodes that I've recorded over 3 years. Joining me, not on a couch, but on a chair, is Mayoran. Mayoran, you head the Asia Innovation Center for SMBC, which is one of the largest, banking corporations in Japan. Financial institution in Japan. So I guess welcome to the show.
Thank you, Arjun, for having me. I'm following you on LinkedIn for a while now.
Oh God.
So
you're as misinformed as everybody else. Right?
So good to be here. Good to have a chat with you. Yes.
Mayoran, what's very interesting. I was obviously, I do a little bit of background on the company and what you do and the individual. And you've gone from being a medical robotics expert to banking innovation.
Yeah.
And innovation and banking sometimes can be an oxymoron. Sorry, right? So I think the question here is, how has your background sort of helped you navigate working in what I might call a traditional banking environment, and actually quite a traditional mindset and culture in banking, right? Or maybe I've got that wrong. So tell us a little about your sort of background, the transition, your role, and how does that all kind of play together?
Sure, thank you. I mean, my background is I did engineering, robotics. In surgical robots, I used to design MRIs and CT scanners. The beginning of my career, run some global projects and with General Electric GE. Then in 2015, there is a big, kind of a wave of Internet of Things. How to get big data from equipments and use the big data to create business value in the enterprise side. So I started the business in Japan, working with large corporates in utilizing data to create business value. So that's when I, started a collaboration with SMBC. When I was in GE Digital, we had a platform to bring all the manufacturing supply chain data and intersect it with the transaction, payments, remittance, FX, the transaction data, because supply chain and banking transactions goes hand in hand.
Great. And
created some predictive models for risk taking, things like. So the model was very unique, even now, is in the B2B space, providing the enterprise software, enterprise application for free of charge for the users, and doing the monetization from the financial products and services. So because in the B2C world, we have the freemium.
Right.
Most of the applications as end consumers, we are using the monetization from advertisement. We want to try something in the B2B space. So that's how the GE Digital SMBC partnership started. But my background in, robotics, surgical, medicine and MRIs and running global projects is basically always solving a multivariable problem. So the fundamental is using technology to solve problems. So when I moved to the other side of, from the technology side to the banking side, what I'm doing is basically the same. How to solve problems like for the bank's customers, basically the industries, enterprise customers, but, using finance and digital as two kind of, channels to solve problems.
No, so I'm going to come back to that because I have a view that I don't think it's technology usually which holds us back in terms of innovations, other stuff, and I do want to come back to it. By the way, I started my career in GE too. So,
oh, really? Great.
So I already like you. Great, right? You had SMBC's Asia Innovation Center. Tell us a little bit about what does it do.
Sure.
And I've got a second question for it is, why does it work? Because if I was to look at the graveyards of failure, there are more innovation centers which were started by banks than I guess any other sector. Right? So two parts to your question. What do you do? Why does it work for you guys?
Perfect question, perfect segue. So the Asia Innovation Center, we kind of position ourselves within SMBC as a turbocharger for the main mothership itself. So what I mean by that is, if we look at, financial institute SMBC, we are the second largest in Japan probably, and the asset size probably 12th in the world. And we make net profit more than like $7 billion last year. So our core business is very strong, but the industry is changing, like, leveraged by technology and everything. So how having a small team drive the transformation of the core business? So that is not as Asia Innovation Center have 3 tracks of activities or 3 missions. The main one is the transformation of the core business, because we don't want to do by the name of digital and innovation doing some flashy things outside of our core business.
Okay.
How to transform, our transaction banking, our project finance, our, leverage finance, those bringing technology. So, and then working with customers, working with external partners, and also uplifting and modernizing our infrastructure processes. That is probably 70% of what we are leading as Asia Innovation Center. The second thing is we have a small team ourselves creating new solutions. Probably I'll come back to that later in generative AI, things like that. Third part is we are having a corporate venture capital, investing in startups around the world, but especially in Asia.
This is called the Asia
Rising Fund, yes.
Yeah, okay.
So those are the 3 tracks of activities. So lead to your second question. So why does it work is because we are focusing so much. I'm adamantly focusing on transforming our core business. Because first of all, the innovation centers to be successful, we have to be relevant to our own colleagues.
But Mayoran,
yes.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Yes, I hear that.
Yes.
And it's not the first time I've heard. The problem comes from sponsorships.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Because, the head of corporate banking wants to control his own change.
Yes.
How does that play out then?
Okay. So as Asia Innovation Center, I have a small team. We call it a digital engagement team to our corporate clients.
Right.
So we go to our corporate clients, the CFOs, facilitate workshops with the customers, solutioning with the customers, or co-creating with the customers. So for my head of corporate banking, he sees value in this team going and do the heavy lifting for him.
Okay.
So it's like being relevant to our own business. The sponsorship is like, he thinks like if his own relationship managers goes, how he's going to differentiate among all the other peer banks. It's not just the cost or pricing. So something different, something value-added services.
And if I may ask, and you can choose not to answer the question, do you operate as a pure cost center then?
Yes, but we tie back to the contribution to the monetization from our main businesses like transaction banking or lending. So what I mean by that is, our team provide like value-added services to our corporate clients. For a CFO, providing data analytics tools, very simple, easy to use tools. And then that'll create a segue to promote our banking financial products.
And you generate demand from the business, or you do a bit of both?
Bit of both.
Yeah.
A bit of both. And when I so far in the last 3.5 years, I personally talked with more than 300 CFOs.
Oh, wow.
Across 10 different countries. And our team provided digital solutions to, it's counting every day, 154 today.
Wow.
We delivered solutions to our customers. Data visualization and analytics, or like payable, receivable process automation. So the CFO sees value. So that create a segue for all the discussion. So the way we position ourselves is, when we look at a corporate CFO, they have 2 priorities in mind. First is their financial efficiency, how I can reduce the money I am paying to a bank. Number 2 is my operational efficiency. So much of paperwork, so much of people, reconciliation, everything. So we focus on these 2. And then when I talk to so many CFOs, they say, oh, digital transformation, digitization, yes, it's a corporate agenda. As a CFO, I'm allocating budget to my manufacturing team for digital transformation, my sales. My team or my department is the least in getting the care or the sufficient support.
Yep.
So that's where, as a bank, when we go and provide these value-added services, we are doing it for free. So the positioning is from a CFO, he has the financial cost and then operational cost. Even a little bit of an operational cost can be absorbed by his financial cost. That's a benefit for him.
Yep.
And they're getting the digital tools and efficiencies, and somebody is guiding. So that's what we are doing as a.
So it's interesting. So you're producing a playbook which
Yes.
Hopefully other banks can sort of pick and learn from. But I do like the idea. You're predominantly internally focused. You're generating work both internally and actually latent need. You're going and meeting the end
Yes.
customer on behalf of your bank.
Yes.
Sort of creating value, and actually you're also focusing on the CFOs
Yes.
who typically get neglected, right?
Yes.
And there's a big sort of CFO tech
Yes.
revolution sort of going on in the world as we talk. Talk to us a little bit about the Asia Rising Fund.
Yes.
And again, what is it and how does that fit into your innovation story?
Yeah. So 4 years ago, when we thought about as a commercial bank, especially outside of Japan, how are we going to, serve differently to our customers? Or how are we going to differentiate ourselves? Our basic theme was focusing on industry value chains. And the theme was, or the philosophy was, to support the digital transformation of our customers' supply chain operations.
Mm-hmm.
With or without bank, with or without SMBC, the corporates, they are, undertaking their digitization activities in their supply chain. Within the organization, with their suppliers, dealers, anyway it's happening. And then no one is going to, go to a corporate bank and write piece of paper for a remittance. So the expectation is the embedding, even in the corporate banking, embed the financial services in their digitized supply chain. At the same time, most of the corporates are still figuring out or looking for support in how am I going to digitize myself? Who is going to, handhold me in that blueprinting, road mapping, and then going to, this big consulting. Itself is it's a leap. So that's where but as a bank, we are not a consulting firm, we are not a software firm, but we can handhold the customers, do the facilitation in the blueprinting of that supply chain digitization. Mm-hmm. That's where we started. And we started from providing simple data visualization and analytics tools. Then the next step was the CFOs, in Asia, Southeast Asia, India, we have 2,000 distributors. Mm-hmm. We are doing it manual. How are we going to, let's streamline it? So when we look into in the ecosystem, there are a lot of startups. I call it in country for country, former GE word, is finding the right partner solution on the ground which suits well. And we started these commercial arrangements or partnership with some of these startups or the players there. Then we realized we need to have a skin in the game so we can grow together. We can bring the large customers, we can facilitate the solutioning and bring these capabilities. That's when we established the Asia Rising Fund. So we are focusing on the startups with a philosophy of how can we co-create a solution? Our customer, our investee startup, ourselves.
Okay.
So that is the basic thesis.
And how many investments have you guys made?
So far, we started 18 months ago, 9 investments confirmed, 3 ongoing.
Okay.
Yeah.
So quite active, right?
Quite active.
Quite active. Mm-hmm. And I'm assuming that is further augmenting your own team's speed to innovate, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, which brings me to the next topic, right? Yeah. Which is what you and I were briefly talking before we started, which is everything around generative AI and agentic AI, right?
Yeah.
So I've got a series of questions for you.
Go ahead.
Some of them might be a little bit contentious, although the point here is not. There's a whole long list of use cases for generative AI, right? Question for you is, how many of them are actually generating real value?
Yeah.
Right? Versus perceived value, right? Maybe it's too early in the day for us to be actually even judging it. You correct me, right? What's your view on sort of hype versus reality, right? Let me stop there because I want to come to Agentic separately. So let's talk a little bit about GenAI.
Oh, yes, let's do that.
So my question is, hype versus reality, which use cases are you seeing traction?
Yes.
Is value really being created?
Okay. So great question, Arjun. So myself and my team, we personally delivered GenAI enabled solution to customers already.
All right.
So let me come the details of that, right? So as I said, the last 4 years, we are doing this facilitation, providing data analytics and visualization for the CFOs. Having a business intelligence dashboard, it's a snapshot.
Mm-hmm.
What does a CFO want to do? He wants to understand the root cause.
Mm-hmm.
Why my cash flow is going down, why my cash conversion cycle, how can I improve? Then what measures can I take? What is the impact of taking measure A or measure B? That the next best action, the continuous analysis is what the CFOs want to do. So in 2023 August, when the GPT-3 came up, we were thinking, okay, we were providing these dashboards all the time, running all the workshops. I think using GenAI, 2 years ago, my hypothesis was, using GenAI, we can take the BI dashboards to the next level of deeper analysis.
Mm-hmm.
So actually, in less than 3 weeks, we put a prototype. That's a beauty of the AI and GenAI these days, right? So which is like a series of questions the CFOs can ask, and then get these the responses in simple English.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not just like a textbook answers. We created our SMBC, a fine-tuned model on top of an LLM back then, is to use the quantitative data, do some weightage, and then give more curated answers for that particular customer, for that particular operation. So it took the traction way beyond than we thought.
Okay.
Then we did actually a 6 months, proof of concept with 2-3 customers. The second realization for us is most of us people, we are not ready to blindly trust a response from an AI.
Mm-hmm.
So
there's proven that hallucination,
and everything.
And I think hallucination will increase. And then also it is about, the data which is coming in, right? Because at the end of the day, if I may say, garbage in sort of leads to garbage out, right?
Absolutely. So all these things, right? The availability of the required data is not sufficient.
Mm-hmm.
And then the reasoning itself was not matured as a model. These are the limitations even today. So what we did was, there are 3 things, if I oversimplify it: the accuracy of the responses, the consistency, and all these, the so-called guardrails for bias and, sensitivity and everything. So the accuracy part, with the latest models, that what we do in the quantitative data, to guarantee the accuracy, is we are not using the LLMs to do the calculation itself, but creating SQL queries or Python codes to do the calculation. Mm-hmm. So that the accuracy part. The consistency also, we are doing a more of an instruction-led kind of a fine-tuning. But what's most important, what's the practical use case is, not to expect correct answers all the time. Mm-hmm. So one of the most pragmatic use case we are actually implementing to the customer is do the reviews. So when we talk to the CFOs, when they get monthly performance reports from all the countries, they're trying, why your sales revenue is not going there, this, that, what's the reason? So usually the CFOs are asking a series of questions to understand the performance, how to improve, etc. So we call it a CFO agent, which is basically doing the review on behalf of the CFO. So even the consistency is slightly different. The question is a bit off. It's fine. But it really, really helps the teams on the ground and the CFOs. Number one, the teams get prepared well. The CFOs also, not just quantitative, his own preference, his emotions, his a point of view are also inbuilt in the model. So it's basically doing a dry run of a review. You prep well, and then you go to so that is what given within the limitations of generative AI, but identifying a use case which is useful for the CFOs and all the team. So it's actually kind of a bottoms up of the institutional knowledge in an organization. So that is what we are actually created and already provided it to the customers, because it's the accuracy, consistency, accuracy we guarantee. Even a little bit of a variation in consistency doesn't matter. So the identifying the use case like that is important.
So you're already now, so you're moving on from GenAI to Agentic,
yes.
right?
Yes.
I'm going to take a step back. I'm going to put you on a spot with a question. I have a hypothesis. I wouldn't say I wrote a paper, but I wrote a thought piece on this, right? So there are two very interesting things going on. In terms of technology, we're seeing the emergence of agentic AI, right? So autonomous AI, which can represent me as an individual, as a consumer at a bank, right? We are also seeing the emergence of open finance, right?
Yes.
And open finance, in simple terms, in my view, is the access and availability of data, right?
Yes.
Now, you bring these two things together.
Yes.
If I'm a bank, this is very worrying. And I'll tell you why.
Okay.
Banks, or traditional banks, have one of the reasons that they have been able to compete against if the neobanks and digital banks is this word called trust.
Yeah.
Right? A lot of that trust actually comes from fear.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Because, this is your livelihood savings. Do you want to put it with a young unknown bank? Right? And a lot of that fear or trust actually comes from imperfect knowledge.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Now I have an agent, right? An agent does not necessarily perceive fear, right? The agent takes perfect data or whatever data is available, right? And makes autonomous decisions on my behalf, right? Doesn't that start to feel very scary if you're a traditional bank?
Not really. Actually, I'm thinking it as a great opportunity. Let me take a step back on how we are looking at the agentic AI or agentic workflows in a very pragmatic approach, and then I allude to how we are looking into the future. So in any operations, like I'm using corporate banking an example or CFO again, is we talked about the financial efficiency, but the operational efficiency part is actually pulling down the financial efficiency. And then even if I take a very simple operation of, procurement to pay, so many variations, so many checks things to happen, it's like a operational nightmare for
it
us.
is.
But in the agentic workflow, it's not even a concept of like exception. Like you have a standard process and exception. It's not like that. Every individual like conditions are an agentic workflow, and you can create as much as you possible. So imagine that a bank or anybody providing this agentic workflow to a corporate CFO, that will be a natural embedding of your banking functions to the corporate operations. So I don't know the smart people how they call it, but I'm calling it as an agentic BaaS.
Okay.
The banking has not just an agentic workflow for the corporates, but we bring
BaaS.
the payments, FX, remittance, cross-border remittance. Those are regulated activities. So today there's a disconnect. The corporate side or individual side, we need to do the operations, and then the instructions are handed over to the bank and the processing is happening. But if we can provide that agentic workflows itself, and then streamlining or deeply embedding the financial services, that is going to have it's going to change the business model or operating model, either in the retail space or the corporate space. Corporate space would have more value. So that is how we are looking into it.
Go ahead. No.
Yeah. So if I take one step ahead of that, envisioning is the fundamentals of banking or financial services is not going to change. I think so. Meaning you gather a lot of deposits, so many people, and then you lend. This is many to one and then one to many, right? But today the constraint is the operating capacity. The other side, like if you look into securities or anything, you gather a lot, securitize it, and distribute to many. So the fundamentals are going to be the same, but what's happening or what's accelerated is everything is getting into small ticket, large volume, real time. The small ticket, large volume, real time is going to be only way to manage that is digitizing them now with the agentic workflow.
Agreed.
Yeah, so that's what, as a financial institute, having the both sides, the more we entering into operations, or to a certain extent, combining the agentic workflow operations with the financial services, that itself is going to, create the market itself.
And you're going to deepen the relationships, right?
Yeah.
But my question is, won't the newer banks with, if I may use the word, better infrastructure, less legacy, better quality of data management, again, less legacy, won't they actually move at a rate faster as competitors than they have in the past? Because they will do exactly what you're saying.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
That's my question. So so it comes back saying, don't the legacy banks actually have that challenge, which becomes a lot bigger in terms of agentic AI, with the emergence of agentic AI and open finance?
Again, so first of all, yes. Same time, don't underestimate the non-readiness of the customers.
Okay.
Even the customer themselves, they have legacies, they have hesitations, they need hand-holding. So it's I personally think, even for an incumbent large bank like ourselves, we have the challenge in the systems, legacy, data, and things like that. But for the newcomers, yes, they will be much, much faster and nimble than us. But the pace of a customer, how much they are going to, cope up with that, versus we do things in a slightly different way to cope up.
I get it. And I think you've got a very, very good argument, because I think I'm applying very much a consumer banking lens,
yes.
Right? Where the hand-holding is a little less, right? Consumers have 2-3 bank accounts even today.
Yes.
Corporates, I do understand, relationships are much deeper, they're multidimensional, they're much more longer term. And so therefore, the model is very different. So extracting a corporate customer is much harder in the sense. I've got a question. We're running out of time. But here's sort of the $1 million question. There is more emerging technology than ever before. Yes. Right. Even in my sort of, I use the word short career, but not short career. I think we've seen more technology in the last 5 years than the 15 years before that. Right. And I've been sort of working with 20 years. In my humble opinion, it's not about the money that you have. It's not, I think, necessarily about the people you can hire. I think a lot of it is about just the mindset. Right? Yes. What's your biggest learning in terms of your role and the work that you've done with SMBC? How do banks stay not ahead of the curve, but along the curve? Because these technologies are not going to stop, right? The genie's out of the bag, out of the bottle in some way. Is there a silver bullet out there? Is there a mechanism? What do banks need to do differently going forward?
I wish I knew the answer. But okay, so at least, again, every day I come across because I have a venture capital running and then do these things. Right? Sure. Every day I come up with new capabilities, new technologies. But the only thing I kind of pace myself is identifying that significant customer problem and relevant to the customer. It might sound cliche, but as I said, I don't underestimate the non-readiness of a corporate customer or a customer. The hand-holding needed, where they are, how to take them along. So the technology wave will keep moving, but if we identify a few problems, significant problems, and have 2-3 capabilities to solve that. That is how I'm kind of combining them. And then at least for, let's say, the easiest example of data extraction from a document. The easiest but the toughest, in any corporate, within the bank, everything. So we have 2 or 3, modules at our disposal. Like that. So and then, design it, innovate, it's interchangeable, blah, blah, blah. That is technology thing. But from a thought process point of view, my mindset point of view, kind of classify the big customer problems, how we are going to tackle, the value unlock out of it, and having a combination of solutions, so multiple solutions with different technology for that. So,
I get that, right? So if I may paraphrase at the risk of getting it wrong, you're saying solve real problems, solve it at scale, there needs to have a value associated with it, and that's when it's useful, right? Otherwise, it's a hobby, right? And we can do that. Last question. What do you do in your capacity to educate, train, and bring the senior management and the leadership along the journey? Because that's very important, right? That sponsorship, that sort of buy-in, that willingness to take that leap. So what is it that you guys are doing which has worked in the last few years?
I think in that regard, I'm really fortunate because as SMBC Group, we have a forum called a CDIO meeting, our Chief Digital and Innovation Officer. But it's not one person. It's our group CEO, Group Chief Strategy Officer, Finance Officer, Chief Information Officer, Chief Data Analytics Officer.
Okay.
All of them get together every month. And then the internal teams, we bring proposals, business ideas.
Right.
And they decide on the spot because we don't wait for the annual budgetary cycle, IT budgets, which we have.
Yep.
But for anything like, new initiatives, which we are running it for the last, I think, 5-6 years. The last week, I think we had the 75th CDIO meeting or something like that. So every month, you run it like that. So they have the exposure. I would say that our board level, they are more, I would say, have the visibility and the understanding of that. So which is in a way, I'm very fortunate.
Yep, you are. And I think that's an interesting mechanism.
Yeah. So the decision-making structure is there. We call it an AI CEO budget, a 50 billion Japanese yen or $350 million US. Every month, if the proposal makes sense, instant decision-making. And then we have a follow-up on that. And then also we created we call it a SWAT team, a virtual cross-functional team, including external members, because the business units, they come up with ideas or they have aspirations. But you need to have a framework. You need to define, measure, run the programs, things like that. So to support the business divisions or we have a centralized expert team to handhold and support our own business teams so we can run these initiatives. So those are some of the mechanisms we have to, cope up with the pace. But other than that, we have the usual, the LinkedIn Learning, Udemy, we curate and make sure it's different level of, our management level, executive level, they go through that which is as usual.
No, I think all of this actually sounds quite impressive. Yeah. I'm actually going to have some of my clients, that's what I do for a day job, which is that management consulting, call you guys up because I think, because I think the part of the world that I operate mostly in, which is sort of the Middle East, Central Asia view, they're going through this sort of, conundrum in terms of how do they solve for innovation at scale and not come across as just a swanky little room. Right, with all kinds of nice, video screens and colorful chairs, and colorful chairs, and then it turns into a glorified conference room, right? And I've seen that happen quite often, right?
I'm adamantly against that.
Yeah, and I'm gonna definitely ask them to sort of reach out with you, and vice versa. Mayoran, thanks for coming.
It's a pleasure.
I appreciate you taking out time.
Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of the forum.
You too. Right? Enjoy Japan.
Thanks. Perfect. So, ladies and gentlemen, that was Mayoran from SMBC. He heads the Asia Innovation Center. Some very interesting conversations in terms of what works for actually a very, very large financial institution, which would be valid for a number of organizations who do listen into this show. So with that, I'll say goodbye till the next episode. Cheerio.